Lost. Highway 99. Is there a way back? I left the city the same day. Smoke from the forest fires slowly drew over the entire sky above Ontario, turning it into something murky, like old, dirty glass through which light could be seen, but not clearly what it was. The sun, as if behind theatrical curtains, looked listless and powerless. It no longer warmed, only broke the silence with a yellowish light that seeped through the thick smog. The city was suffocating. And I, along with it. A light wind carried from the streets the smells of flame, char, ash, and something inexplicable, a sorrow that hung in the air like a heavy blanket. Everything around seemed to be dying. And I, too. I stood at the edge of the city, where concrete jungles transitioned into parched fields, and felt nothing but an emptiness that was growing in my chest. I had only a backpack, old, worn, with a few things I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Her things were there, things I couldn't get rid of because they seemed to hold me captive. I had abandoned everything, work, acquaintances, my usual life, and walked into the unknown. But I wasn't fleeing from someone, not from people or problems. I was fleeing from myself, from the man I had become after her, after Sophie disappeared. I stopped beside an old road sign, barely clinging to a rusty pole. Its paint had long since peeled, and someone had tied a red ribbon around it, which fluttered in the wind, like a silent warning, or a final farewell to what had been. My hands trembled as I raised my thumb to the sky. Cars sped past, none stopped. I watched them go, the blurred silhouettes of people in the windows who never noticed me, a random traveler standing on the roadside of his own life. And I thought, some of them had already experienced what had broken me. And some didn't yet know they were standing on the edge. Sophie's disappearance left not emptiness, but an abyss. Her things still lay in the closet, untouched, as if frozen in time. Her perfume still lingered in the bathroom, and its scent periodically brought me back to days when everything was different, warm, alive, full of hope. Her voice echoed in my dreams, soft, gentle, but with a hint of sorrow that had now become my constant companion. But her trace in this world had vanished, without a note, without a goodbye. Only silence, cold, deafening, that stole hope and suffocated from within. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt anything real. Emotions, as if washed away by rain, remained somewhere far away in the past. Perhaps that was why hitchhiking seemed my only option, the only chance to find myself amidst this chaos. When you have no control, you can imagine that fate will eventually take you by the hand and lead you where you're meant to be. If such a place still existed. Standing on the shoulder of Highway 99, I took a deep breath of the heavy air. The taste of ash was bitter on my tongue. Dry grass crunched underfoot, and I felt again that loneliness which let me know. The road I had chosen was not just a path away from the city, but a journey into myself, into those depths where fears, guilt, and memories reside. I raised my thumb. The first car sped past without stopping. Then the second. Then the third. It seemed the world moved on, oblivious to my small tragedy, my unspoken silence. But I knew, I wasn't alone on this journey. Sometimes, people who seem ruthless and indifferent are also seeking a way out of their own darkness. Sometimes, such travelers meet on life's roads, accidental fellow travelers in search of salvation. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. My only hope, that along the way, there would be at least a drop of light. Even a small sign that would say, "You are not completely lost." And I set off. I stood on the roadside, watching as an old truck slowly crawled out from behind the hill. It was dark green, almost merging with the colors of the surrounding forest, and entirely covered in corrosion. Rust blanketed its metal body. Its cracked headlights seemed to weep light that barely penetrated the layer of dust and grime. The machine moved slowly, as if struggling against its own weight and time. It wasn't driving, it was crawling, like a heavy stone that had fallen from a mountain and was seeking its fate. The driver leaned towards the window. I immediately noticed his eyes, unnaturally light, cold, colorless, like ice under the morning sun that cracks but doesn't melt. There was no human warmth in him. His voice, when he spoke, sounded strange, as if broken, wooden, devoid of emotion, but with a hidden power that pressed on the soul. You going far? He asked, without raising his eyes. Wherever you take me, I replied, and didn't recognize my own voice. It sounded like an echo from a deep well, reverberating in the emptiness. The driver nodded, and I unhesitatingly climbed into the cab. It was cold inside, though the engine seemed to breathe fuel and metal. The smell of gasoline mingled with the old leather of the seats, and somewhere deep in the corners of the cabin, there was a scent of a long unaired cellar. It was a place where time was forgotten. The radio quietly rustled, emitting strange hisses and snippets of songs, like memories losing shape and meaning. The driver was silent, and I dared not break this silence. It seemed that any word could shatter the thin line between reality and something much darker. Hitchhiking is for suicides, he suddenly uttered. Or for those already dead inside, I replied, feeling his words resonate in my soul. His hands on the steering wheel flinched. I noticed deep old scars that stretched across his skin, like lines telling a story of pain and loss. He said nothing, only pressed the gas pedal, and the truck suddenly sped up, as if it remembered it had to run somewhere. We turned off the highway. The road was lost amidst a dense forest that seemed to have grown from the darkest dreams. Trees bent over the truck, their branches touching, creating a dark arch through which no sunlight penetrated. Darkness fell earlier than I expected, covering everything around with a thick blanket. We stopped at a gas station that couldn't be found on any map. Its windows were covered with opaque film, and from within, a green neon light flickered, emitting a strange coldness. The silence was so profound it could be cut with a knife. The attendant stood behind the counter, as if waiting only for me. His face was blurred, like a drawing on an old photograph, and his eyes, like washed-out paints, devoid of contours and form. When I stepped into the store, he leaned towards me and said quietly, "Water is for the weary, and memories, for those who no longer wish to remember." I took a bottle of water but didn't even remember how I paid. Everything was as if in a fog. When I returned to the truck, it stood with its doors open, but the driver was gone. Only a map remained, nameless, without any markers, just a black curving line and a cross at the end. On the back was an inscription. "You've been here before." I got behind the wheel. The GPS was silent, the phone screen dark, the radio only mumbled fragments of phrases, sometimes his own thoughts, sometimes others' fears. Then I heard a voice. "She waited. But not forever." Suddenly, I saw her. She stood on the roadside, wrapped in a light coat, her hair, black as night, falling in waves over her shoulders. Her eyes were like the sky before a storm, deep and shifting, as if hiding a tempest within. She didn't wave, but I stopped. She sat down silently. "You came back," she said softly, and her voice sounded like an ancient melody that doesn't let you forget. "Were you waiting?" I asked, not looking away. "We always wait for those who are lost in their own circle," she replied, and I felt time stop. I didn't ask who she was. My heart already knew. "What happens next?" I asked. "Only that which was, and that which will be, simultaneously," she answered enigmatically. Her words were like wind in a closed room, elusive and impossible. We were approaching a bridge. It hung in the air, seeming to connect not two banks, but two realities. Beneath it, only darkness and silence that consumed everything. "You must go alone," she said and vanished. Without a sound, without light, like a thought dissipating in the wind. I moved forward. When I reached the middle, the road suddenly disappeared. I wasn't just driving, I was flying through space and time. And I saw myself. On the roadside. In an old coat. With the same gaze, but more weary. And I understood. I had always been here. Merely repeating this journey again and again, hoping to finally remember what I had once left by an empty window. My journey didn't lead nowhere. It led inward, to that place where memories cease to be pain, where guilt is not an end, but a beginning. If only you manage to return in time. And when the road disappears, and the sky becomes a mirror reflecting only yourself, you either vanish into it, or you finally see who you have become. Or, perhaps, who you could have been. There are no final stops, only realization. Only silence that echoes back. Silence around, and silence within you, relentlessly calling not to an end, but to a new beginning.